Hello listeners. With Halloween less than a week away, I thought it would be appropriate to cover people's worst experiences during Halloween. Our first post is by AD Caked Enough. This happened to a friend of mine. It's Halloween night and there's a knock on her parents' door. Dad goes to open it and there's a man with a bag on his head, standing on the porch, silent. The man makes a move to step into their house and the dad pushes him backwards. Everyone watches as the man falls backwards off of the step and smashes his head on the ground. It's revealed that the man with the bag is my friend's grandfather, Mum's dad, who was trying to Halloween prank them. He was rushed to the hospital with permanent damage, no longer able to take care of himself or his wife, who had mental health issues. They both ended up in convalescent care. Additionally, my friend's mother never forgave her husband, placing the blame of the accident entirely on his shoulders. They divorced shortly after. God, that's sad. The second your friend's father opened that door, he was put in an impossible situation which would change his life. No one in their right mind would just let a strange man walk into their house. It's really the grandfather's fault for not anticipating his reaction. In the comments, Bagel says, "As messed up as this is, don't let it deter anyone reading this to not be suspicious of strangers trying to force themselves into your home, no matter what day or holiday it is." The next post is by DRMLC. My girlfriend asked me to go with her and her son trick-or-treating. We picked out costumes for everyone, invited the neighbour kids, and went around for about 4 hours. We took tons of pictures of us and the kids, and a kitten followed us back to her house that we ended up keeping. We dropped the kids off with their parents, then went home and got her kid ready for school the next day while trying to keep him from eating too much candy. Next day at work, our mutual friend asked what I did for Halloween. I told her to check the girlfriend's Facebook because she posted everything and I wanted her to see the kitten pics. Turns out I'm cropped from every picture. All the people we visited, all the other kids' parents and a few of the neighbours we talked to are all tagged in her posts about how much fun her and her son had. But I felt like I was being cut out of her public life. It's pretty dirty for her to do that without telling you, but there could be more to it. Maybe she didn't want the kid's dad seeing her with a new boyfriend or something. But still, she should have told you rather than leave you with that surprise gut-punching revelation. The next post is by Ginger the Cat. When I was around 8 or 9, I went over to my friend's house to fool around a few hours before a Halloween party which we'd both be going to. In their backyard, her sister came up to me and asked me where their dog was. They had a black Chow Chow who was fairly docile and around 4 years old and bigger than me. I showed her to the dog and he was chewing on a bone. Of course, back then I made a huge mistake, but I pointed to the dog and in a split second, he went from chewing the bone to chewing on my arm. I tried to run, but he had a vice grip on my arm, but eventually he did let go. At the time, my friend's parents weren't home either, so his sister called 911. They ran inside and locked me outside with the dog circling and growling at me. The maid came running outside and threw a chair at the dog, which made him back off. Also, while I was out there, I felt strange. There was no pain, and there was a ton of adrenaline in my system, but I sort of felt at ease. I also started to reflect on what just happened. There was a lot of white stuff, which looked like whipped cream, oozing from my wounds, along with a ton of blood. Blood was everywhere, stained the concrete and the grass. Everyone was crying too. The paramedics arrived and everything up until the ER was a blur. I had 6 cuts, 3 cuts on the inside and 3 on the outside of my forearm. 5 stitches on the outside of my arm and 10 more stitches on the inside. The doctor said I was lucky to still have my arm, as the dog's mouth was just the right size that it missed several vital veins and arteries. It was very traumatic, but thankfully it did not ruin our relationship, and funnily enough, I was back at his house after a few weeks, petting the dog again. But I think it's safe to say we did not go to the party later that night. That must have been horrible. Chow Chows are such cuddly looking dogs. I have to say though, I'm very surprised how quickly you became comfortable with it again. It's not even like you really provoked it at all. The next post is by Oni-chan's Bread. I had costume plans with a friend who chickened out on me. She wanted to wear her own regular clothes and pass it off as 80s, while I was in a ridiculous Ginger Spice costume. She was obviously influenced by her snotty roommate who called me immature. I had her drop me off after that and decided to find other plans. I decided to hang out with some other friends, but the girl who knew how to drive didn't want to pick me up. So I decided to walk there, about a 7-mile walk. I got a quarter of a mile down the street, tried to cross the road and got hit by a car. 13 years later, I still have the metal plate in my ankle. I did not see that coming. As terrible as that is, I'd be glad I was hit after a quarter mile of the walk rather than 6 miles. But if your friend didn't apologise at least for not picking you up, then you need new friends. I feel like this story was 90% how terrible your friends are and 10% what actually happened to you. The next post is by Weagle. When I was around 12, I went out trick-or-treating with a friend. We ran into some older kids that my friend wanted to hang out with, so we tagged along. They wanted to go pumpkin smashing. I was a rule follower and I didn't want to be around trouble, but I let my friend talk me into it. We came to a house that had a bunch of great pumpkins. You could tell they spent a lot of time on them. There was a bowl of candy with a note, so the kids assumed there was no one home and started destroying the pumpkins. I just watched, feeling uncomfortable. A couple days later, I'm reading the paper and see a letter to the editor from the owners of the house. They listed the address. It said how awful it was and how it wrecked their kids' Halloween who spent so much time on those pumpkins. I felt sick. I showed my friend and he thought it was cool and took it to show the other kids. I realised then our association was more about living on the same street than friendship. I still feel terrible. Anyone with a conscience would feel bad. The kids aren't going to understand it. They'll probably just think people wanted to destroy their pumpkins. It's really sad that some low-life degenerates would notice that someone has put a lot of hard work into something and feel the need to destroy it. I just hope that one day they get a taste of their own medicine. The next post is by Susie Lu Wu. Some years ago, I was at the elementary school that my children were attending a few days after Halloween. Anyway, there was another mum in the office and her daughter was a kindergartner who was just returning to school after an absence because of a trick-or-treating injury. Basically, she tripped while running across a yard in the dark, like you do, and face-planted into a tiny, cute cemetery decoration that had a tiny, pointy plastic fence around it. The fence went into her eye and got stuck. Not into her eyeball, but shimmied its way in between her eyeball and eyelid, and you couldn't pull it out because you'd scratch her eye. So they had to transport the poor, screaming, tiny person to the ER with a fence sticking out of her face. They got it out with miraculously minimal damage, but she had to wear an eye patch for a few days. As of our last encounter, the child hates all things Halloween. I don't think it's fair to hold Halloween responsible for that. The fault, I think, lies with her running aimlessly in the dark. The final post today is by A Devil's Boy, and it's a bit longer than the rest. I went to a small Halloween get-together with me, my wife and a few friends, and we had a great time playing games and drinking. My wife even got fairly drunk, which is really unusual for her. We go home around midnight, Uber since we're responsible, and we get ready for bed. My wife starts having some abdominal pain, but we don't think anything of it as it's getting close to that time of the month. Fast forward an hour later and she's writhing on the bed in the worst pain of her life. I rush her to ER and the staff there take her to a room and start doing their asking questions, drawing blood, etc. One of them take me out into the hallway and give me the worst news I've ever had. They say there's a chance it could be serious. Maybe ovarian cysts or some kind of aggressive cancer, and her life could very likely be in danger. I go back in the room and try to keep a strong face for her sake. She hasn't heard any of this, and they've barely started drawing blood to run tests. Then, suddenly, her pain evaporates. Gone. She looked up at a nurse and asked if she'd been given any drugs, and was told no, all they've done so far is draw blood. Turns out it was a kidney stone. A f***ing stone. I had the ever-loving shit scared out of me over a tiny little stone. Granted, I'm sure it hurt like absolute hell, but even 10 years later, I'm furious that that person had that conversation with me before they even ran any tests. Jesus Christ, I thought I was going to lose her. Yeah, we've never gone back to that hospital. Well, kidney stones can be dangerous, but good God, to drop the word cancer based on the fact that she has excruciating stomach pains. I get managing expectations, but that is extreme. Whoever that doctor was, they would make a terrible GP. Thank you for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. Please like and subscribe if you did. I hope you all have a great Halloween and don't experience anything like any of these stories.